Healthcare services in Sudan have been brought to a standstill. At least 39 facilities in and around Khartoum have been shut down. Some have faced direct assault and others have run out of electricity and water. Ambulances have also been targeted, preventing them from reaching the wounded.
The hospital kept operating until Saturday 11 a.m., the morning of the first attacks. The number of physicians in the hospital was 21 and the nursing staff was 38. With the escalation of violence and the security tensions, the doctors had to evacuate all the cases except those inside the intensive care units. There is a shortage in staff, medicine and oxygen. The hospital is witnessing a shortage in many things, and even the doctors have left, and there aren't any people left in the hospital.
And a 22-year-old travel blogger from India has found himself trapped in Khartoum amid the heavy fighting. Maheen S., known as the hitchhiking nomad on Instagram, has over 200,000 followers. He says the last few days have been terrifying and that people are running out of basic supplies.
Bombing all the time, the gunshot. I actually woke up on the first day with the gunshot and bombing sound and the black smoke on the air. So it was so terrifying. We are not getting water, we are not getting any power, we are not getting any electricity to recharge our battery. So that's the main problem, and water price is really high. Only one still water bottle left. This is the one and only one. And everything is empty now. All the water, all milk, everything is empty here on the refrigerator. 1,000? Wow. See, everything is colors. Nothing left. Food stock is not.
Well, Arise East Africa correspondent Mark Bichachi has been monitoring developments, and he joins me live now from the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. Good to see you, Mark. And in the pictures coming out of Khartoum, we've seen black smoke billowing up into the sky amid the sounds of heavy gunfire and explosions. What's the latest you can give us into the conflict in Sudan?
The situation in Sudan continues to become more dire by the day, given that the 24-hour ceasefire did not take root. In fact, mere hours into the ceasefire, we saw that the Sudan forces went back into battle mode, and they have been fighting since. The situation in people's homes is much worse. Many of them have run out of food. Remember, this is the holy month of Ramadan, and there is a tradition where people go out and get food and prepare a feast at the end of the day to break their fast. So there is also an issue about how people are getting food. The hospitals, as you've correctly put, 39 of them are out of commission. They've run out of electricity. And what is beginning to become clear is there is going to be a humanitarian problem on top of the military issues that they are facing. So the situation in Sudan gets more dire by the day. Even worse is the fact that the intervention by various powers in the world, including the UK and Britain, have not borne fruit. So the situation is seeming as though it becomes more difficult for the people, and there seems to be no end in sight as we speak, Charles.
Obviously, as you said, Mark, big concerns about this turning into a humanitarian disaster. Military jets strafing and bombing Khartoum, soldiers engaging in ground combat, civilians caught up in it. And there are concerns now that this could degenerate into a civil war or into ethnic conflict beyond just the two generals fighting for power. I mean, how much traction do those concerns have?
Well, they're very valid concerns. Remember, earlier on in the year, there were tribal tensions within the Sudan. Let's also remember that the RSF forces were previously the Janjaweed, and they were involved in clashes within Darfur. And we've seen Darfur itself has flared up. So there is also the possibility of flaring up past conflicts and past issues that have been there. Don't forget that the region is also being destabilized. If this continues, there is going to be not only a humanitarian crisis within the Sudan, it is not only going to become a civil war, but To compound matters, we have seen that civilians and civilian installations are being targeted by these forces. So it could be an escalation beyond what I think even these two generals are imagining now. And let's not forget that the RSF has 100,000 personnel. So it is a big issue. It could escalate into a tribal issue. It could also escalate into the secession of places like Darfur from the greater Sudan. And that is why you've seen regional leaders very keen to pop into Sudan to try and sort out this issue before it becomes too serious.
And briefly, Mark, would it be too crude to talk about Arab and non-Arab in this context? I wonder how split and how strong they are, the kind of support they might be getting, and how that may be amplifying the current crisis.
Well, thank goodness up to now, the undertones of Arab versus non-Arab Sudanese has not come to the fore yet. But we do know for a fact that it has been an underlying factor. If this continues and the RSF, for example, decides to go back to its Janjaweed stance, then we will see increased tribal and ethnic-based violence, Charles.
So basically, in terms of the diplomatic moves, the peace process that you're seeing, Mark, it seems stalled at the moment because it doesn't seem like anyone is going to be heading into Sudan anytime soon.
Well, Charles, that is indeed a very good question. The talks are ongoing. What is happening is that the people are talking on phone with the generals. The various civil society groups are also pushing for peace within the Sudan itself. The citizens are calling for calm. But the question is whether two things. One, whether these generals actually trust each other whenever there is a peace conversation, because there is a huge lack of trust between the two of them. And then number two, whether they will continue to hold the power to actually roll back their forces in case of a ceasefire. So the ceasefire that has just been declared now is being monitored, and it's been pushed by the various peace brokers, whether it is the United States and the African Union. But the question still remains at the center. Can these generals, number one, trust each other to come to a place where they can agree? Because when you talk to the people who've been discussing the issues of the future of Sudan and were getting headway into returning to civilian rule, they will say that these two generals were at each other's necks, even within the talks. Can they get to a point where they can trust each other is the biggest question, Charles.
Mark, thank you very much indeed, and thank you for your very comprehensive coverage there. Mark Bichachi is a RISE East Africa correspondent. He was talking to me from Nairobi.